And that helps to grow a kesher. A lot of times when you have very good short quality, it's not about the quantity. So even if you're not spending an hour a day, but the quality is very, very strong, a child that sees that his father gives him attention, wants to hear about his day, and cares about it, and takes him out one-on-one, even if it only lasts a half hour, that half hour can last a half a year.
Welcome everyone to the podcast HalachaU Rav. My name is Levi Mishalavin, and the purpose of this podcast is to bring the Anash community more familiar with the Rabbonim and Mashpiyim. I'm doing this together with my friend Rabbi Betzalel Bassman, who is the Menahel of several Halacha and Chassidus projects.
Thank you, Levi. Baruch Hashem, I have the schus, I have exposure to many prestigious Rabbonim and Mashpiyim, and oftentimes these Rabbonim and Mashpiyim are not given a platform. The podcast HalachaU Rav is to give these Rabbonim and Mashpiyim a voice, to share their thinking, their hashkafa, chassidus, some of their backstory, to help uplift the entire community. So I'd just like to start off with a little bit of background on Rav Goldstein, who I have to personally thank for inspiring my interest in halacha and I could call it my love and the passion for halacha, and likely many of the halacha projects that I've started in the last 4 years were very much inspired by his, without exaggeration, his teachings and his writings. In my yeshiva training, the first few seforim that I myself published were in Talmudic analysis and the Ritva and the Rashba and the Pnei Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva Eger, and he definitely sent me in a very different direction, which initially led to Chabad, HalachaU, and other halacha projects that we'll discuss shortly. That we're actually partnering on a new halacha project that's starting in Chodesh Cheshvan. So the huge akaras hatov and deep respect to Rav Goldstein, who, if I can, call him Mighty V'Rabbi from a distance.
What a title!
So Rabbi Goldstein is the director of ShulchanAruch, the world's leading halacha database, and he also has his own home study smicha program and web-based smicha program on many different subjects. He's the father Kanai of 12 children. He's a Rov in Tzfas, and he's the author of over 70 seforim. He takes up a lot of real estate on my shelf, which I gladly give him, and many shluchim around the world. I know the Chida, Chaim Yosef David Azulai, authored 122 seforim. He passed away over the age of 80, so I think possibly Rabbi Goldstein will outdo even the Chida in the near future as being the most prolific author that may exist ever. It's with a great honor that he's joining us and bringing him to a wider community, because I think as known as he is, not enough people know of his wealth of Torah, from primarily in halacha, but in many other areas. He has 12 seforim on Dach, which has ignited my interest in learning Navi again, or ever, because didn't really happen in yeshiva. My wife loves his seforim on Likkutei Sichos and Likkutei Torah. Also, I involved in a project of Torah and Likkutei Torah, which he's involved. His communication and his teaching is miktzah shvachi b'fanav, but it's his ability to communicate Torah is on a level that is almost unparalleled on so many different levels. So I think it's crucial for the community to be introduced to Rabbi Goldstein. And our goal today is to go a little deeper beyond just the Magen Avram and the DAAS, to understand Rabbi Goldstein's backstory, what gets him ticking, and how potentially others can be inspired by his harbatzas HaTorah. So Yashikayach. I'd also like to briefly introduce a new project that Rabbi Goldstein is partnering with America's 302, called Kollel Aliba de Hilchasa, which is going to be a virtual Kollel for someone that wants to gain mastery of halacha. It's an 8-year curriculum covering 16 fundamental sugyas, putting in an estimated 5 hours a week of chavrusa learning and shiurim between Rabbi Yaakov Goldstein and the Sgan Rosh Kollel, Rabbi Menachem Rottenberg, and there'll be a dedicated Menahel Poyel that's going to be following up with the Chavri Kollel. And actually, my first question that I wanted to address to the Rav was in relation to the first two sugyas that we're going to be covering from Tishrei until Pesach are going to be on the sugyas of end of life shilas, Bikur Cholim, Avelus, Aninus, and many people have realized these halachas are so important. I get these shilas on a regular basis, so it's obviously crucially important, but many people approach these halachas with a skepticism based on some stories with the chesam sofer and Rabbi Kiva Eger and other sources from the Sefer Hasidim. So what would Rabbi Goldstein's approach be to someone that realizes he needs to gain mastery of these halachas as a shliach, as someone involved in levayas every couple of weeks? Mashiach is not yet here. What would the hashkafic halachic response be, being the author of 3 seforim on Avelos himself? So how would you address someone that has these concerns?
So first of all, I wrote a lengthy article on the subject that's available on the website shulchan.com with all the sources and minus here and there. That definitely it's not something we avoid learning, and you don't have to be chesed, as the Sefer Chassidim writes, that it's a meis mitzvah. You see something that's a meis mitzvah, you have to deal with it. You also have meis mitzvah in Torah. It says the Sefer Chassidim that hilchos avelus is a meis mitzvah because people avoid learning because they think it's tainted or it's bad luck, as if you learn it, you're giving an invitation to l'mal chamavas v'chman. Nothing could be further from the truth. Definitely those who are in positions of receiving shilas, even if you're not an official Rav, but you act as a Rav because people ask you and you're the address for the shilas, without question, just like any other field in Torah, you have to be baki in it. You have to learn. You have to at least know the sugyas. I can just tell you that I once had a shliach call me and ask me the following shilah, which someone who's been well versed in the chesam found very strange, but I just saw, if you don't learn, your mamish don't know anything. He said he was by the Shiva home, by the Suda Savira, and they were serving wine and meat, and it's forbidden for an avil to eat wine and meat. What should I do? What should I tell them? So I said, wine and meat, it's only by an einin. It's not by someone who's sitting Shiva. In fact, it says in the Gemara that Leinivra Yain Ella Bishvil Avelim. It was made for the Avelim. So I'm just saying, this is a sugya mamish that there's so many things that people don't study and people don't know. And I have to say that in the field of medical ethics, which are very serious life and death shilas, even many Rabbonim are afraid and don't do shimush and don't want to study it. I was forced into it because of personal family and personal shilas that I received of life and death. But I'm just saying it's important that the knowledge in these things be out there.
Wow. So who would you say shouldn't be learning these halachas? Who is the chesam sofer referring to?
Regarding who shouldn't be, everyone can learn it. We learn it in Rambam, Gimel Prakim, Perek Echad. We don't avoid learning it. If you're learning Sefer Shulchan, you can learn it. Someone who's not a Rav who gets shilas, then it's not crucial that he study them. You know, Rahman al-Islam, when it's not applicable. You know, if Rahman al-Islam comes applicable, you have to know them. So first and foremost, it's to Rabbonim. Rabbonim, which means anyone who's in a position to answering shilas, whether it be a pulpit rabbi, anyone who gets shilas, you have to know. Other than that, I wouldn't say it's a priority for every individual. I mean, you have the Hilchos Shabbos, you have the Hilchos Nida, you have all the halachas and Aruch that you have to study. But since that in Lubavitch we are all prepared and bred on the idea of being lamplighters and available for the Jewish people to answer and give them a direction, so it's one of the most asked shilas that Rabbonim get, even amongst non-religious. That don't usually call up with shilas and Hilchos Nida and don't call up about shilas and Hilchos Shabbos regarding Dini Avelis, they call up. I can tell you that the last 6 weeks I've been going back and forth for hours with a number of families of victims from October 7th and the Rav of the Yamam unit of the police force here in Israel regarding when to make the ceremonial date of the commemoration generation. There's three different options going back and forth. Almost all of them that I'm dealing with are not religious, but they want to know what the halacha is. So you have to know what so the Rav of the Imam spoke with me, and we went back and forth. I had to speak to a number of the families. I got to know the stories a little bit of what their sons did and what was happening. But I'm just saying these are shilas that Rabbonim get all the time, even from a non-religious crowd, because when it comes to death, everyone wants the best for their loved one.
You definitely have a very busy schedule, doing a lot of things. Can you give us tips on your time management?
So it reminds me of the story with Reb Zusha when the Maggid sent someone to him to learn about Saras. I don't have time to speak about time management. What do I mean? Everyone has the same amount of 24 hours in a day. I don't have any more hours than anybody else. The secrets of time management is simply making a schedule and keeping to the schedule. And I actually, for many, many years, have a journal. I have a daily journal. This is one of them. I can show you right here. I have also an online version where my time has to be jotted in. Anyways, it's jotted in, right? Every Ayin Roya, Eizin Shemas, after 120, Hashem's going to show us the slip of everything we did with every minute of our life. So I want to keep a little copy. And I'm telling you, it's a very great motivator. It's a great motivator to manage your time, to not get caught up in things that are not as important, and to schedule yourself. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to do it, but someone who isn't managing the time, it's definitely something to do to get themselves back on track. That's one of the ideas. Of course, time management, if you want to accomplish a lot, you have to limit certain things. You have to limit engagement, social activity. I have very limited. For years, I didn't have WhatsApp at all. And now even that I have, it's very limited, and to groups. A lot of people are in 1,000 groups. I'm hardly in any groups because it takes away from my ability to dedicate to the goals that I want. So, everyone has the same amount of time, and everyone has things that pull them away to use it for. So you have to make yourself goals, see what you want to accomplish, and fit it in.
Okay. Well, so it's very interesting that you mentioned about journaling. So you journal. What do you journal about? How much time a day do you spend journaling? When do you journal? Is it personal things? Is it just about time management? Is it?
No,
the journal.
The journal is a daily scheduler. It's a daily scheduler that has a line for every half hour. Every half hour has to be topic, what I did, and usually I also add what I learned in that hour, or what I accomplished in that hour, or what I things I learned. And it's actually very useful. You go back. I have from the whole previous year of Dach and pay down. You sit down, you do a cheshbon nefesh. Most people, he says, right, do a cheshbon nefesh on Tishrei, do a cheshbon nefesh every day. From Chayel corresponds to another month. Who remembers what happened yesterday? Who remembers what happened last week? We remember what happened 6 months ago. If you have a journal, you actually do. You can go through and see, and then put things together. It's statistics. So many businesses are built on statistics. And you can't have statistics if nothing's recorded. So the beginning of knowing where you're heading and what you're accomplishing is by having a record.
Wow. So I remember a few years ago, you spoke about, you inferred some of your backstory. Could you tell us where you grew up, which schools, yeshivas you went to, and some of your journey? I know you mentioned I once heard one of your upbringings with Rabbi Avtzin brought you to Lubavitch. Could you give us a little bit of a window into that?
So I grew up in Miami.
The one, sorry to interrupt.
So from Brazil.
The one story you mentioned was about some sort of baseball team you used to follow, and how you daven for a certain baseball team to win, and wanted to know if you can daven for a certain.
Not baseball, the Miami Dolphins, not baseball. It was the Miami Dolphins, 1993.
Okay, yeah. Tell us that story also.
The Snowball Fest.
Okay.
That's a lengthy story. I don't know if we have time for that whole story. In any event, so my parents are Balshuvas. They grew up. They lived in Brazil. My father's originally American a number of generations, and they lived in Brazil for business, and that's where they get married through Chabad in the early 1980s, 1981. And they moved to Yerushalayim. They went to Yeshiva with the Rebbe in 1981, and they got their Rebbe's Bach. They moved to Kfar Chabad. From Kfar Chabad, they then moved to Yerushalayim. They were neighbors of Rav Lezer Nanas, and that's where I was born. My sandik was one of the famous chassidim in Yerushalayim. It slipped my mind. Anyways, one of the famous chassidim of Chabad of Anash Yerushalayim, and Rav Lezer Nanas. Anyway, so I was born and bred already in Lubavitch, but they eventually moved down to Miami, and then we moved to New York and then to Miami, and throughout that time it was basically I was affiliated with the Lubavitcher school system.
Which yeshiva?
So I grew, I went to elementary school. In Miami, I went to Torah Semes. It's an elementary school, a Lubavitcher elementary school, and then it's part of the Chafetz Chaim from Queens, part of the branch of Chafetz Chaim from Queens. And for high school, I went to what was known as Torah Chaim, also a branch of Chafetz Chaim. And so I grew up Litvish. Pretty much the Chabad aspect of it was just background. It wasn't anything that was really part of my life. And I guess, I said, growing up as a teenager, I wasn't the firmest person in the world growing up as a teenager, to say the least. Growing up in Miami especially, with no chassidus, and you have no taivas of elikus, no taivas of ruchnis, you don't even know it exists, because you didn't learn anything about it, and you have all the taivas of gashmis growing up in Miami. So what do you expect from a kid, right? Anyways, so I was a little bit rebellious from this perspective. So when I knew that there was opposition to Lubavitch from the school, so I have to check it out. If they're against it, I have to see why. So that was a little bit of the ingredient, but mainly was discovering Tanya Pasha. I started learning Tanya, and I fell in love with the ideas. It's like like a thirsty deer, as we say in Tehillim. And someone who never tasted chassidus in his life, tasted of the kus in his life. So that basically began my journey. In learning chassidus, I didn't join Lubavitch. I wasn't Lubavitch. I just learned chassidus. And then so when I came to learn in Eretz Yisrael, because they do a gap year, right? 1 year after high school, you learn a gap year to then decide what to do. Anyway, so we had a whole bunch of different yeshivas from Eretz Yisrael that came to visit us and try to recruit us to come to enroll. So every yeshiva that came, I asked them if I can learn Tanya. And I'll never forget, one of these meshulachim, one of these shadarim of these yeshivas. So it was like everyone asked, like, open to, can I have video games? Can I watch television? I asked, he was like, I don't know. I have to speak to the Rosh Yeshiva. I don't know about this. This is dangerous. And so I understood that. And then he, by the way, got back to me and says, no, the yeshiva won't allow it. So then there was another yeshiva I spoke to. And when they came, and they said, yeah, of course, no problem. Whatever you want. As long as you're learning Torah, you come. So I came. It was Medrash Shmuel. Yeshiva was Rav Matzko. It's a very big Talmud Chacham. So that's where I learned. I learned there, and I learned Tanya at the same time. And that's where I basically became more affiliated. That's where I met Rav Gershon Aftzin, who at that time, he was running the yeshiva there in that area, in Shari Chesed. But I was already affiliated with Chabad. I already went to, even in Miami, I started davening Chabad Minyan, etc. And from there, it took about 2 years. That was when the famous Rosh Yeshiva from Bnei passed away, and there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of tension in the air, and it became a little too much. And that's when I made the decision to try the Chabad Yeshiva. And that's when I went. I came to Tzfas, where I live now. I went to Yeshiva here for 2 years.
Wow. Okay, so we'll have to get to the dolphin story at a later interview.
Yeah, curious to know what it is.
Wow. It's a lengthy Maisa.
Which Rabbonim did you do shimush by?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. You have to understand that 20 years ago, there wasn't that much availability to do shimush in Chabad. Almost not available at all. Very scarce. So let me begin from the beginning. Okay. I got smicha in 770 of Azdaba. He asked me on. But he tested me in 3 halakim. And his bechina, the way it worked, is that I basically, to go with my chavrusa, was with him in his office. I think the test took about a month each section, literally every day for hours at a time, every single day with Rav Astaba. And he would deal with shilas and we would, and there were times that I helped him. There were times that I looked things up. There were times that he sent me to the restaurants to take care of this problem that came up right away. So that was already my first taste of shimush. I didn't officially have smicha yet, but I did it in the process. When I came to Eretz Yisrael, I served in a very elite unit as a chaplain. And that's actually when I went, that's most of my halachic knowledge I gained from there, from the army. How did I gain it from the army? I was a chaplain, I built a shul, I built 2 basic bati medrash, I built the place up. And I had a set seder of learning every single day. I learned for a few hours straight every single day in the base medrash without interruption. And that's where I summarized the whole Shulchan Aruch. I went through the whole Shulchan Aruch and summarized. Now, that took 3 years to do. That was a 3-year mission. After I was done, I wanted to do shimush. I wanted to find, and I did a lot of shopping in Eretz Yisrael, and I couldn't find almost any Chabad Rabbonim to do shimush by. I spoke to the Chabad Rabbonim. It wasn't available. It was not really done. The kids are in the end. I moved to Beitar, and I did shimush by Kollel for about 3 years, 3+ years. We used to have. First of all, I davened with him every morning, and we davened in the same shul, and I was in touch with him all the time. But aside from that, we had every Friday in the Betzalel Rov, together with him. I sat with a number of colleagues, Lav Dafka Chabad, the Sephardim, Litvish, Hasidish, Zvil, other Hasidic groups, and we were a chabura, and we would deal with shilas from about 9 o'clock in the morning till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, every single night of Shabbos. This went on for many years. And it was mainly focused on Hilchas Nida, but of course, any shiloh that came up, we dealt with. And so that's where and Rav Shalom, if you don't know, he's one of the most asked shiloh Rabbonim in Eretz Yisrael. Is
who is your Basher? Who's your Basher?
What is it?
Who is your Basher?
The Basher Lamel is the son, so he's the Rav. Rav Shalom Al-Kohen is the Rav of Beitar, the Chabad Rav of Beitar elite, one of the Chashav Rabbonim of the Beitar elite. He's already old. He's in his late 70s, if not early 80s by now. He is the son of Avram Hirsch HaKayin, who was a very famous Chabad Chassid from Yeshiva, originally a Polish Chassid. But they came to Chabad, and so his son, so he used to be the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Shalom of Teres Emes. In 1990, when they built Beitar, the Chabad community brought him down to be the Rav, the DAAS, and that's what did shimush by in about I think it was 2000, from 2011 to 2015. I'll just share with you one story, a very cute story about how you have to listen to a Mara DAAS. So obviously, when you're doing shimush, you also argue a lot with the Rav, and that's Talmidei Yesem Mekulam. So I used to get into a lot of arguments with him in Halacha, a lot of arguments. And sources going back and forth. Anyways, one time, I don't know how it came up, but we davened together at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and quite often I would bring up some contentious subject. I don't know how it got to that, but basically we began talking about the Ksav Alter Rebbe. And he himself was a big sofer, and he's very against Ksav Alter Rebbe. I wrote a whole article, and I'm not going now into the details of the 2 different sides, but bottom line, there is a side amongst Rabbonim that are very against the current known Ksav Alter Rebbe, because it's not really Ksav Alter Rebbe, and there's many chashashos of psul they claim against the Ksav. So he's telling me this, and he then tells me, so I then told him, but Rav Shalom, my tefillin are Ksav Alter Rebbe. So he says, if so, then don't say a bracha on them. So what do you mean? I'm about to put them on. He says, don't say a bracha. I laugh. Don't say a bracha. Of course, I'm going to say a bracha. Anyways, so listen to this. I start davening, right? I put on towels, etc. And also, middle psukkah is in. I noticed I forgot to put my tefillin on. It never happened to me before in my life. Now, what's the halacha when you put on tefillin middle psukkah is in? You put it on without a bracha. So I put on the tefillin without a bracha. I made the bracha after Yishtaba, but in Sukkot Azim, I didn't say bracha. As he said, so I was makayim his words at the same time. Anyway, so that's a cute little message. Wow. Last I have to mention is Rabbi Yaakov Yosef, the son of Vad Yosef. So I used to, for years, for 8-9 years, I used to walk back and forth to work, and I passed by the base medrash of Yaakov Yosef, Vad Yosef's son, and Chazon Yaakov, and I used to stop in for the shiurim. And I really fell in love with the shiurim. Dafka after he passed away, I got my hands on all the shirim he ever gave. It's thousands of shirim, and I basically listened to almost all of them. And so even though I didn't, personally learn from him face to face, one-on-one, but I do consider a lot of my knowledge and general knowledge to have been gained from him. He was one of the greatest Magid Shirim and Bekim and Halacha in the world. He was always known as the greatest prodigy of the sons of Rav Yosef in Yedias Halacha.
You mentioned that you
So
summarized.
that's regarding the shimush question.
You mentioned that you summarized the whole Shulchan Aruch. What do you? Is that you? That's something that you've written that hasn't yet been published, or what do you mean when you learn those 3 hours? What do you mean you summarized the whole Shulchan Aruch?
Correct. It's something that's handwritten. It's paper and pen.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned from the beginning and I summarized all the halachas. That became all my books I put out. Usually not. Usually the berhetiv. If there was an interesting berhetiv that I need to look in, then I would look at the shachar DAAS. But no, not with all the nisekelim. It was mekabel ramah and berhetiv.
I know you've mentioned to me in the past that you have a seder going through the whole Dalach Shulchan Aruch with the berhetiv every year. Is
Right.
That's connected to this type of learning?
No, I don't know. Without berhetiv. No, so what I do is not with berhetiv. It's just mekabel ramah. Yeah, go through mekabel ramah of the whole Shulchan Aruch. It's a yearly cycle.
The 1 year track.
And Rabbonim as the 1 year track, you basically do a daf a day. It's split to a daf a day in this book, and someone from Yerushalayim put out that if you do a daf a day in this book, you end up finishing going through the whole Shulchan Aruch. And I'm just telling you, there's so much in halacha that there's no such thing as a Rav, even if you went through the whole Shulchan Aruch, which a lot of Rabbonim have not, by the way, but even a Rav who has gone through the whole Shulchan Aruch, it's not possible humanly for a person to remember everything unless he's one of the prodigies of the generation. But otherwise, you have to be in constant review. I'll just tell you, on my side that happened last week or 2 weeks ago, it was published on my website. Basically, somebody lent somebody an item, and he wanted it back. And the Rav he asked, who's the chashuv Rav, gave a mistake in psak. The person told him that halva shleishim yom, you have 30 days for halva. Right, everyone, right? Right, it says you have 30 days for halva, so he doesn't have to return within 30 days. So within 30 days, doesn't have to return. The mistake. The mistake is that's said, that's true, it says that, but only regarding money. When you lend money, stam halva shleishim yom. When you lend an object, you don't have 30 days. That's an explicit rule in the mekabel. It's mekabel in Shulchan Aruch, in chesam mishpat. Now, I do that because I review it. I review it all the time. Every year I try to review these halachas, so I was aware of that. And I'm just saying, if a Rav doesn't take the time to look up the shaila and he remembers, I learned stam halva shleishim yom, you're getting 1,000 phone calls. You don't have time to give every shaila all the attention. So you answer based on that. You can give a mistake himself.
You going back to your journey from the yeshivas to Lubavitch and then jumping into Tzfas. I mean, was it all positive that you saw in Lubavitch in terms of the yeshiva experience? Was that a happy landing, or how did you handle the system in Lubavitch, and what sort of recommendations perhaps can you have for the improvement and the growth of the Chabad system, and in terms of learning from other systems? I like to say, there's Yud Beis Shvatim. Every shevet can learn from each other. We can't all be perfect at everything. So how was that landing? And maybe everything's perfect in Lubavitch, and there's nothing that we can learn from others.
Right. So. Living in dreamland doesn't last very long. You wake up eventually. Of course, nobody's perfect, and I 100% agree with that shita. I speak about it all the time to my talmidim in seminary. I push it all the time. Of Achdus, in fact, one of my main missions in my halachas writing, anyone who reads it will notice that I bring all the shitas. Why do I bring all the shitas? Just bring the Lubavitch. Who cares about everyone else, right? The Rebbe, the Eibishter, the Rebbe, and the Chassid, that's it. No one else exists anymore. No. because one of the ways of making achdus is by showing that everyone has a platform, everyone has a place. So yes, I'm going to bring the Mishnah Brura, and I'm going to bring the Ben Ish Chai, and I'm going to bring all the Paiskin, even if that's not how I personally paskin or I follow. And that's one of the ways, if you saw 100%, I think you learn something from every group, and the idea of being shaylu or negating and putting down other groups is very immature and not the ways of Chassidus, klalu, and not the way of Bassman is saying. With that said, in specifics, it depends. Listen, when I learned in Litvish yeshivas, there was a very big emphasis on character, on musar. But that also changes from yeshiva to yeshiva in the Litvish world. Some place more emphasis than others. Midas, character traits, lashon hara, things like that. Regarding learning, it's almost without doubt that the major mainstream Litvish yeshivas have more of an emphasis on asmada, of learning, at least in practicality, that I see. And I think it also gears down to the idea that there's a little bit of a lack of chashivas by us for limud Torah, meaning by other groups, limud Torah is viewed as the highest possible thing. There's nothing greater than to marry your daughter to a Talmid Chacham. I don't know how chashuv that is in Lubavitch, that you marry your daughter to a Talmid Chacham. Maybe it's better you marry your daughter to a shliach, a future shliach, or something else. It's not placed as much emphasis, and I think that's something we could learn from them. That's number one, because of course reviewing all the Rebbe Sichos, the Rebbe Perek Aleph and Tanya already about Talmud Torah, that learning Torah is the highest thing. How many times did I ever speak about Mivtza Torah? So I think that's something that definitely can be in intake. And I'll tell you the truth, I've been speaking about this already for a number of years. No one has ever done it yet, but I speak to Menahelim and Rosh Yeshivas. I tell them, at least I tell them that to set up once a week for Talmidim in one yeshiva to learn with Talmidim in another yeshiva, so people see they're not aliens. There's what to talk about, because the division creates that eventually there's divisions in Chabad, divisions outside of Chabad. You think of them as being foreigners, and that eventually creates from the Shulayim, unfortunately from those who don't have the greatest control over their midas and words, to speak badly and to negate and to put down and cause machlekes. So one of the ways of battling that is by learning mutual things together, and then you see, wow, they also have Torah by them, and each one benefits from the other.
So you've written many books. What tips can you give to other writers who also want to start writing?
Number one, start. That's number one. Don't wait for anything. Just start. Tips. Let's see. I view writing a book as building a building. I used to have a dream as a child of being an architect. So I'm not an architect, but I do kind of do architectural work for Sfarim. Anything you want to write, doesn't matter on what subject you want to write a book in, you have to first create yourself a map. You have to create yourself a map of hierarchy of what's the main goal of the book, what is the book coming to accomplish, and then break that down to all the categories and subcategories. Once you have all that in place, then the filling in comes in. Then you fill it in with all the information. That's number one. Book has to have a map before you begin. And by the way, I only knew this much later on, but that's how Encyclopedia Talmudit was written. And Rav Zevin, Alav Shalom, he first wrote the sketches of all the categories and subcategories, and after of the whole Encyclopedia Talmudit from Aleph to Tav. And what they're doing now, Wikipedia was already written. So that's number one. Number two, you have to have a lot of zitzfleish. It's not easy. It's I have to say it's pashut yisurim to sit and focus and write and decipher, and it's not easy. Not easy at all, especially in writing halacha. Person's doing translation, person's doing even summaries. It's much more easy. But when you have to put together more than two pieces of information and compile them, you have to mamish, like squeezing a lemon, like squeezing a brain out. It's hard, it's tough, it's hard, it's challenging, but you have to push yourself. You have to get good coffee. Get a lot of good
How many
coffee.
hours a day do you spend writing? How much time do you spend writing?
I give my office hours, so I'll explain. It used to be, I used to spend writing almost from 6:30 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, with breaks in between for davening, for eating, for kids, but basically my whole day was on the computer, other than shiurim and tefillas and etc. But last year, I rented an office, what we see over here, and I actually accomplished more publishing this year than in previous years, even though my official hours are less. And so I'm here from 9 to 6, and that's a lot of times with shiurim in between. I give 16 shiurim a week here in the community, and but I have no disturbances. You sit, you work. So it's usually per day. It's usually about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about anywhere between 7 to 9 hours a day of writing.
Are you suggesting that
With breaks.
everyone rent an office outside their house? Like you cannot, it's not the same?
Depends. It worked. Listen, I put out many seforim having my office in my house. It worked, but there's different things work for different people. Sometimes having your own office gets, no one's on top of you. You have all your machshavas zaros can bother you. And it depends on the situation. Depends on when COVID hit, everyone then discovered what works for who. Or stay-at-home office workers. They need to be away from their environment and their surroundings to be able to focus and think about things. So it's really a decision that's personally based. Tachlis, if you see it's not working at home, try an office.
Let me go back to your, let me ask a little bit of a personal question, if I may. So you had mentioned that part of your personality is rebellious and pushing back. And I see that sometimes in our conversations and the way you're very.
When I was a teenager.
What?
When I was a teenager.
Even now, I see, Lamal.
Okay, I said when I was a teenager.
When you were a teenager, right? So I see. I would propose that even now, you're very strong-minded in your opinions in halacha, and how do you balance that nature of having a strong opinion with doing shimush and being mekabel from others? And kind of butla that, like if you have a Rav and he has an opinion, let's say you're having a conversation with Rabbi Kasil Farkash, like who would you consider your Rav that if he says something, I'm going to follow him 100%, even if I disagree, or is that even correct? How does that work in terms of a training Rav? I'm the Menahel of Kollel Chabad with over 150 aspiring Rabbonim. So if let's say you're talking to them and some of that was inspired by some of our conversations with your, like you mentioned earlier, your lack of frustration with finding, being able to do shimush. The few Rabbonim we have in Chabad are overwhelmed with the responsibilities. So, what is shimush, and does it mean that how are you mekabel from someone if you have strong opinions?
So first of all, let me push back a little bit on that. I don't have opinions on anything. Pretty much. What do I mean by that? Anything that I haven't researched, done, due diligence on the subject, I don't have an opinion. I all the time tell people I don't know. In fact, my most common answer that I answer people for shilas is I don't know. I have to look into it. So I don't have strong opinions. The opinions that I have are conclusions of research. Now, if I did research on a certain subject, then I try to be very thorough, and I have a whole system that I do, which I'm not going to review right now, but I have a whole system of how to research shilas, which seforim, which paiskim, so it's all encompassing. And my research came up with a certain conclusion. Then I'm going to stick to that conclusion, of course, and according to Halacha, I'm chayiv to stick to that conclusion, unless someone offers me new information that I wasn't aware of, and it happens all the time. And I do a 180. It's not about me, and it's not about my opinion. It's what the literature says, what comes out of the seforim. If from the seforim comes out a new conclusion that I wasn't aware of, then that's the new conclusion. I all the time have revisions, and people send me ha'aris, sometimes not very nice ha'aris. I have to deal with the whole world, so you have a lot of different personalities.
I have to say,
not everyone is or by the way.
A Talmud of yours from Philadelphia, I'm not going to say who, told me that he was so impressed with Rabbi Goldstein. His wife sent him a correction or a ha'ara from something, and he was mekabel from a lady, a correction and something, and he was very nisbol.
Yeah, it's not personal. It's not personal at all. It's chatira ela emes, and therefore everyone can hear and everyone should know that if they're making an argument that a svara of theirs that I think is a puppet svara is not true, and the research shows something differently, so chas v'shalom again mevatel the conclusion I came from researching halacha based on a puppet svara. Doesn't work that way. Now it could be it's even from another Rav. I've had you mentioned Rav Farkash. I've had a number of vikuchim of arguments with Farkash halacha, and there were times that he was mekabel daiti. There were times that he even refused to speak to me about it because he says you're going to publicize what I know that you publicize everything I say, so I don't want to be on the record. And maybe you should take this off the recording. And then there were times that I was mekabel daiti. I'll tell you, it was a mamash ashkacha protest that a very serious shaila in Hilchas Nida that I received of a special scenario of Tevilo with someone who has diabetes. In any event. And my research took me to a certain conclusion, which was a huge chiddush of a conclusion. And I wasn't going to be saying daiti. So, I said, let's get a second opinion from the Machon Pu organization. And they concluded differently than my position. So I said, okay, let's take it to Rav Farkash. And took it to Rav Farkash. And he concluded like the Machon Pu position. And I pushed back at him. I said, listen, Don, these are my svaras. Do you have anything to say against it? Lamaisi, he didn't have what to answer, meaning he didn't have a tshuva, a pircha against my arguments of my conclusion. But at the end of the day, I said, listen, this is a chiddush, and we have an organization and a chashav Rav who's a baki in Hilchas Nida, who's saying a conclusion differently than me. Therefore, you should do like what they say, not like what I say. And years later, I discovered an Alter Rebbe that soiser my conclusion. They didn't tell me that. They didn't know. They weren't aware of this Alter Rebbe. But because I was mevatel daiti, therefore, Baruch Hashem, I wasn't machshel her.
Wow.
Now, it doesn't happen that often because, a lot of times it's, I deal with shilas every single day. And it's not possible to go and get askamas for every one of your tshuvas. This is, same chalkeinu b'seir secha. This is my chalkeinu b'seir secha. And that was the right of all the shayas for tshuvas. Ramay Weinstein, every time he wrote a tshuva, he sent to another colleague to give an agreement for his tshuva. Not necessarily. He wrote his tshuva. Hareitza yachlik. Hareitza lora yair. And maybe from that, yagda Torah v'yadir. But I'll tell you that I learned this from two different Rabbonim, Rav Heller and Rav Azdaba. Rav Azdaba, all the time when I was first learning Shulchan Aruch, and as I said, right, so besides for being tested by him and doing what's so-called shimush, doing the smicha testing, I also was close with him. I asked him shaylos almost every day in Shulchan Aruch. And the cloud that came out was like this: stop asking me if you have to follow things that it says in Halacha. It says it in Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe. You follow it unless you know for sure you don't have to. In other words, some people think, oh, well, maybe in 7-7 they don't do this. Or maybe the Rebbe didn't do it. Or maybe there's no sfekus. If it says in Shulchan Aruch, you have to follow it unless you know 100% otherwise, or an authentic source that says otherwise. So if after researching a shayla, that's what it says in Halacha, that's the end of the day. And we're not perfect, and we make mistakes, and we don't know everything. So we have to be open to receive new information. With Rav Heller, it was a very similar story. I once asked him a shayla, and he says, I don't know. Look up over here in the Mishnah Berurah. I looked it up in the Mishnah Berurah, and the shayla was explicitly answered in the Mishnah Berurah. So I showed it to him. So he told me, don't do this anymore. If you have a shayla, look in the seforim. If the seforim don't say, then come to me.
So with your family and your children, how do you balance, everything you're doing with 12 children, spending time with children and homework and time with your wife? Like, from your personal side, and what would your advice be to an aspiring Rav that wants to really be Marbitz Torah on the highest level? How do you find that balance, and what is the balance? And what would your thoughts be on that?
So first of all, that's one of the big challenges. Bechlal, nothing to do with the Rav, of everybody and anybody in life is finding time for your family and kids. It's not just Rabbonim who are busy. Even someone who just works a 9-to-5 job, a lot of times they come home, they're mentally wiped. They don't have koch. They don't have koch to deal with anything. And, in today's generation, we have a lot of distractions, such as the cell phone and computers, and people can get lost for months and never spend quality time. So first of all, number one is to know that it's a mitzvah d'oraisa for a husband to spend time with his wife. And it's every single day, as the Rebbe writes in numerous letters. That's A. It's a mitzvah after l'reacha kamaycha. It's a mitzvah of oina, v'chuli v'chuli. Children as well. Your children, you brought children into the world, you're not done. You have to be mechanech them, and part of chinuch is growing a relationship of love with them. So it's not easy. It's 100% not easy. It's a challenge. But I'll tell you some of the ideas that I balance, juggle to do. First, number one, again, I have a journal. It's part of the schedule. Part of the schedule includes in it befevish a time slot with my children, a time slot with my wife. Not always is it possible. We sometimes have different schedules, but when it's in the schedule, at least we try to respect it and follow up with it. So that really helps. That's number one. And we have to remember we're not going to have children forever, and our wives are not going to demand the same amount of time and attention forever. This is an opportunity now when our children are in our home, and we're bringing megadolim together with our wives to build this relationship. It's, in other words, there will be a time that a person will have all the time that he wants, so to say, to spend on whatever dreams he has. But now part of his halachic goals is that he has to spend time with his family and kids. Another aspect is that we do this on and off, but ideally it's to once a week take a child out to a restaurant, or here in my office, bring them here, spend time with them one-on-one. And that helps to grow a kesher. A lot of times when you have very good short quality, it's not about the quantity. So even if you're not spending an hour a day, but the quality is very, very strong, a child that sees that his father gives him attention and wants to hear about his day and cares about him and takes him out one-on-one, even if it only lasts a half hour, that half hour can last a half a year.
I see that you write on all different subjects, Chassidus, Dach, and Shulchan Aruch. What's your main passion from all of these?
Right, so that's an interesting question. My main passion is to study Torah and organize information. My beginning of learning halacha in an organized fashion really began when I started learning here in Sfas Yeshiva 20 plus years ago. And Rav Moshe Orenstein of Lubavitcher was my personal mashpia, a very demanding mashpia, by the way. He didn't have a lot of mushpayim. It was one of the very few talmidim who were his mushpayim, because he was very strong and very demanding. Anyways, it's a whole nother mindset. But he told me to learn Hilchos Talmud Torah of the Alter Rebbe from beginning to end. So I learned it, I summarized it, and Hilchos Talmud Torah, the Alter Rebbe writes, you have to be a baki in Tanakh, and you have to be a baki in all Halacha L'maaseh, and that comes prior to everything else. So I realized the whole system doesn't make any sense. Until today, I remain with this opinion. The yeshiva's learning system, with all due respect, doesn't make any halachic sense. The fact that my son, after Yeshiva Ketana, Yeshiva Gdoila, is going to come out not being Baki, even in Aruch Chaim, is a busha. How's that possible? Well, what is he in Yeshiva if not to know how to follow halacha and how to follow religious observance? It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's against Hilchos Talmud Torah of the Alter Rebbe. In any event, without going into that aspect in and of itself, is also, by the way, of Sikha the Rebbe, I publicized in the beginning of each one of my seforim all the things the Rebbeim said about learning halacha, and the Rebbe's famous Sikha of Tafshin Tesvav, Yud Shvat. The Rebbe spent hours talking about the subject, how the system is messed up, and the learning has to change to focus more on hashkafa and halacha l'maaseh and not pilpulim. But I think this is Hilchos of the Mashiach when this is going to happen. In any event, but that's my passion. My passion is I saw it's not available. I saw people don't know. My own ignorance in halacha was astounding. It was astounding when I was doing smicha. I realized how much I don't know. And from things that are befeirish written, that are written. And just the other day, someone asked me a shaila, and I answered this, and he says, "What? I never heard of that before." I told him, "I'll show you where it is." I showed him where it is. And he says, "Wow, how come I never heard of that before?" So I asked him a simple question. "Did you ever go through the sefer?" He says, "No." So how do you expect to have known about it? What do you think? Every piece of information in halacha, like the whole world is spreading on the front of the newspaper. If you don't sit and learn it, you're not going to know it. It's very simple. And so I saw this tremendous void, a tremendous lack, and I personally started off doing it for myself. When I started summarizing halacha, I wanted to know, as an observant Jew following Hilchos Talmud Torah, what I need to know to be observant. And from there, it came to then bringing it to the public and writing seforim. It didn't start that I wrote it for the public. I wrote it for myself. And from there, it went to then, spreading it to the masses. So my passion is in halacha because it's just necessary to know. If you don't follow halacha, there's no religious observance. Religious observance is not about that. That you eat gefilte fish and you have knedlach in your matzah ball soup on Friday night. It's knowing how to keep Shabbos. How is it that a from Jew doesn't know how to keep Shabbos properly? These things shouldn't be only for people in programs. Everyone coming out of the system should be baki, nuchas bayir, nuchas muktzah, and all these things. And so it's not really a passion, it's a necessity. And it's a passion to fill the void of the necessity. But personally, I have goals to do Rambam, Gemara, Mishnah, summaries on all of the major books in Torah. I work on it already. It's not published yet, but Bezrat Hashem.
What would your day in yeshiva look like if you were able to set it up?
I was able to set it up, I would set it up that Shir Aleph, first of all, number one, Shir Chassidus would be organized my mourning on the specific subjects, Likkutei, Bitachin, Sugyas. So when you come out of 3 years of yeshiva, you're a baki in Kisvei Chassidus and even Hashkafa and philosophy of all the major subjects that you need to know for life, That's number one. And you can pick, there's plenty of my marchas to pick under each subject to have it organized. Say the Shane, which the first say the Nigla, I would have that should be Eon of Gemara in Halacha L'Maisa subjects, not to learn any sugyas that are not Halacha L'Maisa. You start learning in the Gemara and you bring it down to the Shulchan Aruch, so you learn also to learn Gemara, but at the same time you also learn practically. And say the Girsa would be a Seder of learning Halacha. Of mastering different subjects of halacha until after 3 years of yeshiva g'day, Bacher comes out. He's a baki in Aruch, he's a baki in chosen selected subjects in Yeridea, in chosen selected subjects in Even Ezer, and selected subjects in Chesam Mishpat that are not for Rabbonim, for everyone to know.
Okay, that will be our next project, Rabbi Goldstein. We'll work on that.
I told you this is Hilchos the Mashiach. You asked the question.
No, I take dreams and I try to push the envelope. So don't give up on us so quickly.
I just don't understand that it does sound like the right thing, especially based on the Rebbe Sichos and letters. So, but that's not how the original Tim started. Like they were just learning Gemara and they didn't learn it Halacha L'Maisa. So how does that fit with how yeshiva started?
First, as a researcher, I would take that statement and want to research it to make sure that that's the case. I have already some information that I know that kind of contradicts that. There were many subjects of Halacha L'Maisa that they learned in Timchet Mimim, that they got smicha, they learned shchita, Baidek, all these things take a lot of time, even learning Halacha L'Maisa. Today, unfortunately, right? Who today learns Shchita in Lubavitcher? Bachram, who can't make it in the system. They go to Ar Simcha, they go to all these special programs, they learn Safras. That's who we're sending to be the biggest Yeshamayim. It makes no sense to me. In the original time, it was the biggest Yeshamayim and Talmidei Chachamim and the Bachram were the most erlich that were sent to these programs. So I think there has been a change, and I think that our I'm not saying this for sure, but it could be that the way our system is run today is based on the Lubavitcher system. A lot of our Rosh Yeshivas and all came from the Lubavitcher world. Many of the Yeshiva of Lubavitch was not a Lubavitcher, right? Famously, also in Eretz Yisrael, they weren't Lubavitchers necessarily. So it could be it had an ashpa. I don't know. I'm not saying anything definitive on the subject. I brought up a point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to conclude, what would your takeaway be for the world, the world of Lubavitch, the world of Bachrim, the world of Rabbonim, the world of Shluchim? What would your message be for the world?
Message for the world. A lot of achrayas.
As the Maharsha says, the Olam HaTorah, the Makshin Olam. Makshin Olam.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I'll summarize it with something that actually happened today. I was giving a shir in Beis Chabad here in Tzfas today, And we're giving a shir in Hilchos Yantif, and somebody who never came before, they just moved to Tzfas, was there, and I invited them to come to the shir. So they asked, what is the shir about? So I told them, we're learning Hilchos Yantif. So they said, I've been in a frum community already for 18 years. I know everything there's to know in Halacha. They literally said this to me. So, I don't need to go to such a shir. That's what they said. So I think, not everyone has the interesting decision of mind to make that statement to a Rav about to give a shir, but maybe a lot of people think that in the back of their mind, and there's no real difference between the two. Meaning that halacha is a tough subject. Some people think, it's not my thing, halacha. There's no such thing, halacha is not your thing. A Jew has to know halacha. There's no other way to be observant. That's how you're observant, by learning, by studying Shulchan Aruch. There's no other way to be observant. I agree, you don't have to be a baki nechastreifas, leave for the hashgachas and the Rabbonim al-machshir. But so many other sections that you have to know to be aware. And so therefore, I think the takeaway is that the Rebbe, as I collected in the introduction of all my seforim, it writes in many letters that he wants there to be a shir kviyas limud of halacha l'maisa every single day in every community. And it shouldn't be in a way of pilpul. It shouldn't be in a way of, it's very nice to do pilpul and dig deep and discover interesting, juicy information. It's pasha to be to know, to tackle very, sugyas that are halacha l'maisa, that are prevalent and pertinent, and to go after the other for yourself and for your community. And that's in essence my goal. That's my mission in my website and all my work that I do.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you on behalf of the Olam of Lubavitch and Kollel Yisrael. The Eibishter should bench you with the kayach to continue in all your holy work and grow Mechayel Ochoyel, and all your important endeavors and with gesund.
Amen. Yeshakayach, Aksivach, Simateva, good ben shir for all of you in Kollel Yisrael.
If you reached this part of the video, you probably enjoyed it. Please consider donating a video or many videos. Help us continue doing these amazing interviews. Or you may do it in honor of someone, in memory of someone. It's all good. Hope you enjoyed and see you in the next video. Do you by any chance feel the need to be heard, to be motivated, to be someone to accountable to, a coach? Well, you're in luck because I'm starting to coach. And first session is free. You heard right, it's free. You can reach out to me at levisocialhome@gmail.com, which can also be found in the link in the description. And if you want to find out a little bit who I am, you can search my first videos to get a little taste of me. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one. Have a great day.